What's up, guys? Sub-Zero here, back for another not bot review. Actually, today is a patch rundown. Patch 14.24 is coming out tomorrow, and so I thought let's just look at the patch, talk about my thoughts on all of the changes. There's some big changes. The first, of course, being the introduction of 6 cost, 3 new units to TFT, and then also just a lot of balance changes. So if you guys have been completely out of the loop, they're adding 6 cost champions to TFT. These are really like core champions from Arcane, like main characters that they didn't want to add because they didn't want to like spoil things in Arcane, so they waited a little bit to add them. They show up basically like later in the game. The only way you can increase your chance of getting 6 costs is pushing to level 10 or getting some interesting augments, which we'll talk through later. But yeah, they say, I don't know, they say these are very rare. You may not see one every game. I know a lot of people have been prepping for Macau, which is also happening this weekend. I am going to be co-streaming that, by the way, as long as, I don't know, I submitted the co-streamer application, so I assume I'm cool, but unless Riot Games is like, no, you can't do that. I am going to be co-streaming Macau, watching all the cool people pop off there and just, you know, seeing this new patch played out there. So if you haven't followed my Twitch channel yet, probably go follow that right now. But yeah, these are going to pop up later into the game. The only way you can increase your odds is pushing level 10. They say a 1-star 6 cost is about on par with the 2-star 4 cost. There's some crazy effects in here, and so, you know, one might say, you know, hitting a 6 cost is like an insane high roll. At the same time, you know, you will sometimes just randomly get a 2-star 4 cost for free. The thing is, though, a lot of these are very splashable. Well, 2 of them are very splashable. So let's take a look at them. Viktor seems like the most splashable one of all. The idea behind Viktor is there's no way to make him gain attack speed or mana. He has a fixed attack speed, and all of this stuff converts into AP. Instead of mana, he gets 1 cast energy every attacking cast when he has 8. So he just very slowly gets up to his cast. The crazy thing, though, is just his passive attacks do this death ray that shreds and sunders and does true damage. So I feel like you just throw Viktor on any board because he's giving you that shred and sunder for free. Obviously, you can't like play for Viktor and like not make shred and sunder the entire game hoping that you'll hit a Viktor, but once you do hit him, that means that you don't have to itemize that further. And then his active is this crazy ult where he knocks up all the enemies. It's like if you haven't seen Arcane, skip ahead 10 seconds, but you know, when he's like ascending everybody, whatever, he's doing his glorious revolution, they all go into the air, get stunned, and then they get slammed down, and he does a bunch of damage to them. It's a really cool effect. Obviously, stunning the entire board is crazy, and sometimes just like one tapping the whole board is also really crazy. So a very cool unit. I'm hyped to see, you know, how he works, how he plays. He seems like the most splashable one of all of them. I feel like if you ever see a Viktor random 6 cost in your shop, you are just picking that up because he can fit onto any board, which, you know, is cool. I like threats. Threats are great for TFT. All right, next one. Let's go in. We have Warwick. So Warwick actually was also kind of hot, not really hot fix, like slow hot fix buffed. They buffed his AD from 100 to 110 and his execute threshold from 12 to 15% from here because they were concerned about Warwick being too weak. I'll go over. There are a few changes that aren't in these, but that Mortdog tweeted out today, and that's one of them. The idea behind Warwick is that he executes units, heals himself for a bunch, and grants himself 50 mana, which is crazy. He's 100 mana, so kill 2 units, you get auto to cast again. And then his cast is all about this blood frenzied, you know, his active just gives him that blood frenzied thing, which gives him a bunch of omnivamp, a bunch of attack speed, and he does his Warwick, you know, else he goes poo. And then after he kills 5, he gets that blood frenzies and unstoppable for the entire combat. So Warwick seems like the least splashable of them to me. The other important thing to note is that Warwick is an experiment, so he adds this extra way to a cap with experiment. His experiment bonus is on kill stun enemies adjacent to the dead target for 1 second, which seems fine, can easily be countered by people just spreading out, and you know, for 1 second it's not the longest stun, but obviously, you know, not a bad experiment plus by any means. Maybe you could go something like Twitch Mundo Warwick. The question is, would you rather get like true damage onto Twitch from something like Zyra, or that extra like shielding and attack speed from something like Urgot, or would you rather have this? My thought is that you would probably rather have something like Zyra, but the upside is, you know, if you give Warwick the experiment bonuses of like Twitch and Mundo, then he can really pop off. But yeah, Warwick seems like the least splashable one, the one that you really want to like invest items into, want to build items on. You know, Viktor can be perfectly serviceable with 0 items. Warwick doesn't seem like the case. You really want to have 3 items or else you're not that interested in playing him. So interesting, great, kind of a buff to the experiment comp to allow them to cap higher. But once again, you can't really play around hitting a Warwick, but seems fun. Excited to play around that. And the last one, Mel. Oh, Mel, I don't know. One of my favorite characters from Arcane. I feel like she became so cool in the final season, and she's got a crazy passive effect, Banished Mage. The first time you'd be eliminated, if she is cast 12 times, she saves you and you remain alive, and then she gets permanently 10% damage amp after that. So she gives you that last stand type effect on a unit, but she has to cast 12 times. So you can't just, people, I think this is a really good way to counteract the, annoying thing where you just roll it down to 0, pick up a Mel at the last second, and then save yourself. You need to have Mel on the board for a few, for a while to actually get that ability for her to save you. So I think that's cool. And then her ability is also really cool. Dashing to a nearby hex, so she has a little bit of like movement ability. Grants 300 shield to herself and then 2 other nearby allies. So can be 900 shield for your board essentially on cast. 50% of the damage blocked by shields is stored as unstable energy, which we'll get back to, and then she does a little bit of damage, and then every third cast she unleashes that energy and does a ton of magic damage split between 5 nearest enemies. So she's like a triple casting shielder that also can do a ton of damage once she gets that triple cast. I love this. I don't know. It gives me vibes of like the 5-cost Ari. I forget which was that set 9. 5-cost Ari that on the triple cast would just blow up the entire board, but then she's also shielding, which seems so fun. And the Banished Mage effect seems like I love units like this that like mess with your player HP. I loved 5-cost Soraka that would like heal you up. Just gives you, when you hit that melee, you have that feeling of security where you're never going to just straight up get KO'd. Downside, of course, is I'm sure some people will yap and say, this guy just high rolled a Mel and then he was going 8th instead. He lived one fight and then he, went 6th instead. But, seems like a really cool unit. I'm hyped to play around these 6 costs. Seem really fun. As far as I've heard, people have said that they're pretty balanced on like the playtest and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like they're like disgustingly like game swingy and stuff like that. So that's really cool. I'm, like I said, hyped to play around them, hyped to cap around them and see a 6 cost in my shop and go, oh, Mel, oh my God. All right. Encounters, a few new encounters. Viktor's Vision makes 6 costs appear sooner. Mel's Aid grants you like the stimmy. Warwick's Hunger is this Spoils of War one, and then Jesus' Artifact gives you the Artifact Anvil one. These are all cool. They also do on the next slide tell you what the new odds are for all of these. I am 8% odds to see 6 costs earlier. I think a lot of competitive players are going to yap about this, where they're going to be like, I got 2 games in a row in tournament where people just win for free because they get 6 costs. But TFT players are going to yap about everything. I'm fine with this. This affects everybody equally, so it's not like there's really any kind of like strategy here. But cool. I'm down to see some 6 costs. All right, now into the big changes. Academy bonus per sponsored item is going up. I like this a lot. Vertical Academy kind of felt terrible, so I'm not interested in that. Amateur is getting like a buff at lower and a nerf at higher. I think this makes perfect sense. Amateurs, especially without having like a lot of power in Camille, who, spoilers, is getting hit quite hard, seemed really weak early. You're never really excited to put like 3 Ambusher on your board early, but late game 4 and 5 Ambusher do give a way for that Camille comp to cap out. The only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about the Camille comp is that they're not really nerfing a lot of the artifact interactions that make that comp so broken. So I think this comp still will be just like giga broken when you get the artifacts for it. Artillerist buffs. I talked about this on stream. I hit 6 Artillerist and just proceeded to lose every fight. There's no way for a 2-spat or a 2-spat trait that it should be this bad. Honestly, you could probably go a bit higher, but I'm sure they don't want to like make 6 Artillerists like broken before Macau. Automata, these are the biggest buffs, and they did walk these back a little bit. So the changes to Automata here, I'll just pull these up here. But the new numbers, and I can kind of side by side them, are 25, 60, 140 for the resist, and 150, 40, and 1100. These numbers did seem like way out of whack. If there was one thing I was worried about, it was automata buffs. And still, I mean, we're going from 100 at 6 to 140, 800 damage to 1100. I know Mortdog talked about the fact that, like, yeah, it's a lot of damage, but you're not proccing that often, but still 100 resist to 140. 40% buff on 6 automata seems kind of crazy. And even 50 to 60 is a 20% buff. So these are big buffs for automata. I fully expect, automata +1 to be really good. That being said, automata +1 was not very good on this current patch. So yeah, I I can live with this. And then Conquer, I don't know why they're buffing early Conquer. I felt like early Conquer was already like really solid for just a 2 trait, 18 AP and AD that can get buffed up further, and it gives you that loot aspect of it. So a bit surprising to me, honestly. Maybe this is compensating for another nerf, but I don't think there is another like nerf to Conqueror type units. And then Sork buffs, desperately needed, probably needs to be way higher, honestly. Like, why are we buffing like we're talking about 6 Automata by 40%, but 8 Sork is only getting a 10% buff? Like, this is a bit strange to me, because 6 Sork is just horrible. You never want to play Vertical Sork, and Vertical Sork should exist, right? They have a 4 cost. It's a very, very straightforward way to play. They have like multiple tanks. Like 6 Sork should be a comp that you can play around, but it just isn't because of the weakness in the trait. So feels a little bit bad, but I know they don't want to go too hard for Macau. Speaking of going too hard, big changes to Black Rose here. So Science scaling hit at 4 and 5. 5-piece Cyan now heals for missing HP rather than always saving his HP to max, which is really, really big. And they actually buffed 7-piece because the 7-piece did feel a little bit weak. Now they also further nerfed Black Rose. The AP or the shield ratio is going down a bit. The duration and the stun duration on 5 Black Rose, which I mean these also look like very, very big nerfs to me. I think they're just afraid of, you know, Black Rose still being broken. It should be a premier like flex board that you can play, but it shouldn't be that like every single game we have so many people vying for Black Rose, which makes sense. I do kind of like it as a board just because of the fact that it's so flex. You can play Black Rose, Heimer, Zoe, Silco, or even Elise as your backline. You can play Mundo, you can play Alawi. Like, I love that you have all of these different options as far as frontline and backline, but you know, maybe it should be a little weak. The only other thing here is combat story being changed, so I'm going to move this off the monitor for now. All right, Chem Baron, big buff to the amount of HP you get per past armory. You know, another 40 at the final break point, another, what is this, 35 at the one prior to it. A lot of extra HP, and this is just because Chem Baron did feel pretty weak. Also buff to the loot stack that you get on Lost Streak here. I think this is pretty reasonable. Chem Baron, right now, you only ever play it when you start the game with +1 Chem Baron, and even then, sometimes it's a little rough. But they don't want to buff it too hard to the point that, like at Macau, every game is just 3 Chem Baron opener. So I think this is a nice light change. I like this a lot, actually. I think this is about perfect. A little bit of a nerf to Perfected Shimmer Bloom, and then this moving the items recommendation to the bottom doesn't mean anything. All right, small traits. Enforcer, not confiscating your items off your dummy is really, really good. Family, 5 Hamley, progress bonus, whatever. 8 Pit Fighter nerf, whatever. I think this is fine. And then tiny nerfs to Rebel as well. I think this is all fine. Very small stuff. All right, 1 cost changes. I'm hyped for these because these are a lot of units that have just felt very underwhelming. Morgana's spell damage being buffed pretty considerably. I like a lot. It's, well, not that considerably, but a decent bit. I like that a lot, this unit. You're almost never playing around Morgana in the early game if you have the choice. Trundle as well, another unit that's just really not pulling his weight. And then Zyra, a third, also really not pulling her weight in the early game. So I like all these changes. I would say, let's see, we have more 1 cost changes, right? Yeah. There is no nerf to Lux here, which surprises me. I think Lux is like, especially you're buffing Zyra, you're not nerfing Lux at all, and you're buffing the cap for Sork. I think if they had actually buffed Sork harder, they probably would have had to nerf Lux. But since we're not buffing Sork that hard, maybe you can get away with that. Other 1 cost that really that stick out to me, maybe like Vex. I don't think Vex is, yeah, Vex is actually getting a buff at 3 costs. I don't know. I think Vex is about correct. I don't think there's yeah, I think most of these are in line with where I think these units are. It's just, I think Lux is head and shoulders the best AP item carrier if you can get solid items onto her. And so I think maybe a tiny Lux nerf would be in order. But okay, Draven tooltip change, who cares? Powder buff to her spell damage, I think is fine because they're also nerfing ambushers, so they want Powder to be playable. Maybe we see family reroll 4-star Powder being broken this patch. I think it would be fun, but probably not. But, you know, maybe it's something people play towards. And then Vex 3 buff. I do think Vex 3 felt pretty weak, so I like that. But yeah, okay. On to 2 costs. Here are some big changes. Camille, just, they took her out back. They are nerfing her spells healing, her spells AD damage, her spells AP scaling is getting hit a ton. So stuff like Hodge is going to be way worse on her. This Camille unit was just giga broken this entire patch, so I understand this, especially big, beefy nerfs, 300% down to 260% AD percentage on her ability is crazy. But she was a monster. The only thing that this concerns me is this almost like, I feel like this Camille comp really overperformed when you got the artifacts, and then was solid but not broken in other scenarios. And they haven't really fixed this. If you get a Silvermir's Dawn, I'm sure you're still forcing Camille. The downside is that the cap's going to be a little bit lower, but then like you're not really going to be able to play Camille without artifacts, which is odd to me. I feel like it would be much more reasonable just to take Silvermere Dawn and hit it quite hard, which I don't think they changed. I don't think they changed it at all. I think they nerfed one of the Camille items, but a bit odd to me that that's the route that they're going, because I do think this unit without artifacts was a little strong, but not that strong. So I would have liked to see maybe a smaller Camille nerf and then a nerf to some of the artifacts. Nocturne, a bit of a buff here. Yeah, this is one of the more underplayed reroll comps. I did do that Nocturne VOD review that YBY1 did, so, you know, some people are doing it, but definitely seems like he needs a little bit of help. Renata as well, just, you're never happy to put items on Renata early, and she is a Chem Baron, so she should be a little bit weak, but a little bit of a buff to her I'm down for. Tristana as well, underperforming, I like this, and this, I heard some people chattering about how this is actually like too big of a buff to Ziggs. Mort was saying like, oh, it's like a small buff, but 400 to 450, that's a 1 in 8 buff, like 1/8, you know, as a percentage, whatever it is. Somebody smart knows 12.5% or something like that. Buff, like that is a huge a buff to his primary bomb damage, and then his mini bomb damage is also getting buffed by a considerable amount as well, a little bit more than 10%, right? So these are big buffs to Ziggs. The thing is, nobody's playing Ziggs reroll right now, but I wonder if this like brings up some kind of Ziggs reroll comp into the meta. I would love to, because I love for more reroll comps to exist. When I put out a video talking about reroll, you guys always click on that. So maybe we'll see that happen, but this is a very considerable Ziggs buff. So keep your eye on Ziggs reroll at the start of the patch, see if maybe it's playable. All right. 3-star Akali nerf. The idea, Mort said, is that they're buffing a lot of the other quick strikers, so it's, you know, you got to take some power out somewhere so that quick striker isn't broken. I guess that's reasonable. Akali to me did feel a bit underwhelming outside of like really solid setup, so I don't love this. Maybe the idea is you could just buff all the quick strikers and take a little bit of power out of the trait. I'm not sure, but I don't love this. Vander tooltip reword, I don't care. And then a little bit of Zeri buff, I like. Nobody's playing like Zeri reroll for Zeri reroll. You're playing it as like a secondary carry with like Kog'Maw and stuff. All right. Big buff to Blitzcrank here at all star levels. Blitzcrank did feel pretty underwhelming as a tank, so I like this a lot. And, you know, buff to Blitzcrank, buff to Ziggs, you kind of start seeing that idea of like a Dominator reroll comp coming together, maybe, and buff to Automata as well, so maybe like Automata stuff happening. We'll see. A little bit of a nerf to GP where he doesn't cleanse effects anymore. This was just way too problematic. Obviously had the issue with the Cosmic whatever anomaly where he would just cleanse that and be giga bugged out and win the entire fight for free. But also stuff like him cleansing Malzahar Halt was really broken. But he gets some more damage to make up for it. It looks like a pretty solid buff. And like in the fights where you're not fighting something like Malzahar, this should just be a straight up buff. So interesting. Maybe we see some more GP reroll. I don't know. Loris buffs, yeah, Loris did feel kind of underwhelming as a tank, so I'm down for this. Scar, big, well, I thought this was a bigger nerf, but the big thing is really, they're giving him a bit more mana to cast. They're nerfing his damage pretty considerably, which, I don't know, Mortal talked about Scar doing way too much damage as a unit, which, you know, maybe that's the case. You know, they have way more data on like how much damage Scar is doing, and I wasn't really paying attention how much damage Scar was doing in these comps, because these comps, Scar is usually not what matters in the comp. Like how much damage he's doing is not what matters in the Kog'Maw comp. What matters is how much time Scar can buy for your Kog'Maw, because if your Kog gets to that point where he kind of like turns the corner and is just auto-attacking a ton, healing up Scar with stuff like a Gunblade or scaling up with Archangels, then you're just winning that fight every single time. So a little odd to me to nerf his damage, but maybe his damage was just you know, all over the place, and maybe he was you know, too much of an issue in that line. You know, I'm fine with that, and I don't think the Kog'Maw comp needs to be like kneecapped. I think the comp is strong, but like conditional on items and units and stuff like that. And they also hurt his heal a little bit, which I think is reasonable. Buff it a little bit at early stages, which is interesting to see. But you know, I don't think Scar early was that broken. Big buffs to TF here, extra yellow card damage and extra heal here. I've heard some people talking about how TF is like underappreciated and that people should already be playing for TF3. And hey, we're buffing Nocturne, we're buffing TF. Maybe we look at some kind of, and like Loris tends to fit onto that board as well. Maybe we see some kind of like TF Loris, like Nocturne type build appear. We'll see. I'd be hyped for that as well, because in my experience, I have not seen many people playing much around TF3 and doing well with him. All right, itty bitty nerfs to Kog'Maw. Like I said, I don't think this comp needs to be nerfed that hard, so I think this is perfect. Itty bitty buff to Smeech. I honestly think you could probably go a little bit harder. Smeech does, in my opinion, feel just so silly. I spent so many games when playing Ambush or Reroll looking for Smeech 3 instead of Camille 3, and Camille 3 is just a better unit than Smeech 3, which is crazy. So they could probably buff him a bit more, especially to counteract the fact that they're nerfing Camille so hard, but they probably don't want to overbuff, which fair enough. But I think you go a bit harder on this. And then Swain here, nerfing his early game, his 1 cost, and then buffing his 3 cost, the tanky version. I think this is quite reasonable. Once again, Swain 3 is not someone that you're usually, especially the melee form, Swain 3 is not really something that you see a lot of people playing for. And the early game Swain, you oftentimes, especially as like a Conqueror, he is just like a really insane early game unit. You know, if you can get 4 Conqueror in with him, or just some kind of Sorcerer setup with him, and just get some items onto him, he is kind of a monster. So I think this is quite reasonable and not too big of a nerf. All right, on to 4 costs. Ambessa buffs. It's interesting because like I feel like Ambessa just started coming into the meta. These buffs aren't disgustingly big, but once again, like 450 to 500, a little bit more than a 10% buff. You know, like a 1 in 9% buff. What's the percentage on that one? 11%, I guess. You know, pretty big buff on her 80% on her slam. She does like, you know, go back and forth between the forms, I guess. So that's only like half the time she's getting that. So probably not the biggest buff, but I do feel like more and more people are realizing this like 4 emissary board where you play around her and like Corki and like Vi usually. It is actually pretty solid, so I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes like an S tier or A tier comp next patch. Mundo, these are interesting changes. They're essentially making him scale worse with HP because the idea that Bruiser Mundo is just completely broken and any anomaly that gives him HP is completely broken. So I think, you know, him and Garen, they're really hitting their HP scalings because Warmog is like the best item in the game, and it makes sense, right? It scales really well with Mundo, it scales really well with Garen, scales really well with Alawi. They kind of need to bring back some of the HP scalings on these units, so I think this is a perfect change, honestly. You don't really need to nerf the item. Warmog's I don't think is that broken of an item, but it just, the way that it interacts with all of the tanks of this set is problematic. So I like what they did here. Little itty bitty nerf to Heimerdinger. Probably, honestly, a lot of people have said like a bit too much. Heimerdinger is not a very good unit in all, in many ways. You need specifically blue buff for him to be good, and then he kind of gets carried by the fact that Malzahar is a broken unit. So I think Heimerdinger could have gone unchanged. This is probably over the line, but once again, we'll see. They are buffing Academy, which is cool, but a lot of people aren't even playing that version of Heimerdinger, but maybe it, you know, comes into focus. And then Vi, I think these buffs are quite reasonable. Buff to her spell shield, buff to her main target 80%, and buff to her slam 80%. Pretty considerable buffs on all of these. But the big thing is just you're not that hyped to play around a Vi unless you have like Enforcer +1 this patch. You know, Vi should be a premier AD carry. You see a lot of like, you know, Vi being buffed here and Ambessa being buffed here is a big buff to these like AD items, stuff like BT, Edge of Night, those kind of things. Sterax, you know, like you can slam onto all of these. You can now play this more kind of like Bruiser AD flex type thing, which you couldn't really play for last patch unless you're playing into like Camille or like the Violet Reroll comp. And the Violet Reroll comp should still exist. They're not like hitting that really much at all. They hit 8 Pit Fighter, I guess, but I think they've felt like that's in a pretty good spot. So AD item slams feel a lot better this patch, I feel like, which last patch you really weren't that excited to make those slams. All right, little buff to Corki. I like it. Probably could be a bit more. Corki has really fallen off the cliff. I feel like he's one of the worst 4 costs to play around. Once again, though, I think we're just kind of in a world where, you know, you're not that happy to slam AD items, though, you know, obviously like Vi and Ambessa items are a bit different from Corki items, but I like it. A little buff to Corki. All right, we got 5 costs next. Yep, little buff to Caitlyn. Yeah, I mean, you're never that excited to have Caitlyn as a damage dealer. Similarly, Jace just not doing enough damage, so I like the buffs to both of them. Malzahar is getting cratered. I think a lot of people have said this is too hard of a nerf. This unit just doesn't do anything anymore, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about Malzahar 2-star 27 to 21, 6 over 27. That is over a 25% nerf, right, on Malzahar 2-star. That is a huge nerf. I have heard from other people that the issue with Malzahar is not necessarily that he does too much damage, though that is kind of the issue, but that his dot lasts forever, so that when he dies, that dot still goes on. If you have an infinitely tanky board and Malzahar dies, sometimes the dot just kills your board. I think it is a lot more reasonable maybe to just get rid of the effect that the dot lasts forever. If you asked me if I think that's going to happen at some point in this set, I would not be shocked at all if they get rid of that effect on Malzahar. So we'll see. But yeah, I think this is a bit odd to nerf him that hard. Obviously, he's the most broken 5 cost right now. If you see him Malzahar, you can carry him the entire game. But it, like essentially over a 25% nerf on the dot damage at 2-star and a nerf on the mana as well. And then, you know, the 1-star nerf is still there. But like, I feel like 1-star Malz was even more of the issue than, I mean, both were issues, I guess. All right, onto Rumble here. Flamethrower damage and self-destruct resist, just nerfs to 2 of his little, like, whatever you call them, his Junker King +1 things. Pretty reasonable. I think these were some of the strongest ones. Obviously, I don't have stats on that, but you know, from player experience, that's what I felt. And so little, I mean, pretty significant nerfs to these actually is, I think, reasonable. All right. Oh, and a few more 5 cost changes. 3-star Jinx buff, whatever, I don't care. And then Savika, more AD percent on her jackpot. Yeah, I mean, I think this is fine. Sometimes you cash out the jackpot and then she just doesn't do any damage and you lose the fight and you get really sad. So I think reasonable. All right, items changes here. We're 25 minutes in, so I'm gonna try to speed through the rest of this because we got a ton of augments as well. Bramble nerf or buff, I think reasonable. This item's pretty underwhelming. Hodge nerf, I think very reasonable. This item is like one of the best, like the best healing item. Luden's Tempest being buffed, I think very reasonable. And yes, Silvermere Dawn. So the Armor are going down a little bit. That's the one that they nerfed. But still, I feel like Camille will be really broken with the Cutlass, with Prowler's Claw. Like those aren't changed at all, which is crazy to me. And the Suspicious Trenchcoat nerfs as well. I like this a lot. Suspicious Trenchcoat has been like the most broken artifact for the longest time. If you can make it interact with things like Edge of Night, things like Protector's Vow, just so many different like broken interactions with Suspicious Trenchcoat. So honestly, yeah, you could probably go a little bit harder on this, but I understand they don't want to make it like useless. All right, augments. This delayed start, new one, is pretty cool. Sell your board and bench, gain 4 2-star 1 cost, and then you disable your shop. Seems a little bit odd, but you know, if the idea is you get a couple of frontliners, a couple of backliners, maybe some world, you know, if you get like a Steb and a Trundle, that like feels amazing, and maybe you just win streak with that. I don't know. I'm excited to try this out. I don't want to go over like the really small changes here because once again, we are low on I don't want this video to be 40 minutes long, but I like a lot of these changes, I will say. A lot of stuff like Health is Wealth was just a bit over the line. Mad Chemist was the most broken hero augment by far. I like these changes. This support bounty change is interesting where it cashes out much quicker, but you get a random support item. I'm still kind of hyped to take this just because a random support item for a silver augment is still a lot. But yeah, it's like, it's obviously much weaker to give random than to give tailored. But, you know, I like playing, you know, random support items are fun. All right, these, once again, I don't want to talk about every single little thing because it's going to take forever, but Maddie always targeting this Betrayal one, which is so cool, this Maddie Mbessa hero augment. Was this one already in the game, by the way? I felt like I was losing my mind seeing people find this just in their games. But in any case, the fact where you get Maddie's and then Maddie always targets Mbessa's target. I don't know. It seems really fun. I don't know how exactly this like works. You have to play for like Maddie 3 and play around Maddie and Mbessa. Like I don't know when exactly this is offered. Like surely you can't get this at 2-1 because it comes with an Mbessa, but like you would want it most at 2-1 to start getting Maddie's. Like if you get this at 4-2, which I think I've seen it offered before, feels really awkward because like there's no way you're gonna like with 3, if you have 3 Maddies at 4-2, there's no way, like you have to wait 6 rounds to get a Maddie 3. I don't know. It seems odd to me. Experiment Crest added? Oh, that's cool. I didn't even realize that wasn't in the game. All its shimmers, good nerf. Arcane Retribution probably should just be removed from the game. Black Rose Crest being banned early is fine. I like this Crown Guarded buff as well, just because Crown Guarded is such an it's such a cool augment, but it feels really unsatisfying because of the way that like the shield often wears off. A few more Fractured Crystals buffs. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with all of these changes, I would say. Yeah, I don't want to say, you know, once again, I want the video to not be insanely long. I think they made good changes here. Anything that really jumps out to me? Not really. Okay. Last few gold augments. And once again, yeah, I'm quite happy with all of these changes. Yep, I have no notes on these. All right, the new prismatics. This is why I wanted to save some time budget in the video because we got new prismatics that we got to talk about. These 3 are all 6 cost augments. So these are a bit weird to me. So the idea is you gain an item, and then after you complete a quest, you get the 6 cost and another item. So you get 2 full items and a 6 cost for a prismatic. The difficulty is that you have to complete a quest. So for the Mel one, you have to start around with 60 gold and win a player combat. These are 2 separate quests. You can start around with 60 gold, roll it all down, lose a fight, and then win the next fight, and you still get that. You don't have to win with 60 gold, which is what I thought initially. This one seems really, really solid to me. Like you just have to win a round with your only prismatic being a blue buff. Compare this to something like golden egg. Like you have to win multiple rounds for that one to be good. You're only going to take this obviously when you're in a good enough spot to like win a round, but I don't know. I think this is like pretty easy to proc. The Jace, or not the Jace, I mean, Viktor Jace, what they have is beautiful, but gain adaptive helm after you upgrade 9 champions, gain a Viktor and a Jeweled Gauntlet. This one as well seems pretty easy to proc. You can just buy a bunch of pairs as you roll down, though it is going to be 4-2, so I guess it's harder to find like one cost to upgrade. But even just upgrading your board, if you're rolling for like a random 4-cost board, you can make 4 or 5 upgrades relatively easily, and so then you just have to get through those last few upgrades. And I'm perfectly fine rolling, spending a bunch of gold if it grants me a Viktor with 2 items, or even just putting the items on other guys. So this as well seems like quite easy to proc. The last one, though, is odd to me. The Warwick one. Gain a BT after you deal 35 damage to other players, gain a Warwick and a Syrax gauge. So this is very similar to like the Golden Egg style thing, but Golden Egg, you already kind of have trouble winning combats, and you take 1 or 2 unit combat wins and you say awesome. This you have to deal 35 damage. I mean, if you look at just like player damage, I believe this lol chess thingy is still updated, though other people have posted it before, but like you're getting this on stage 4. Base player damage is 8 stage 4. You have to do 35 damage. So that means you have to win 4 combats, right? You have to win 4 combats at least if you want to proc this like as quickly as possible. If you get to stage 5, obviously then player damage becomes 10. So like if you win like maybe 2 stage 4, and so say you deal like 12 in each of them, you deal 24, then you can win 1 stage 5. So then maybe in 3 combats, 3 wins you get there. The problem is that is a lot of wins to take when you're playing, down a prismatic. It's just a bit much to me. I don't know. I think this number probably has to be adjusted down in my opinion, but we will see. It just 35 damage seems like a lot playing down a prismatic, especially, I guess you get just a BT, but still, I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll see. It is nice that it gives you a BT and a Syrax for your Warwick, which he feels like the best one to itemize, I would think. All right, Experiment Crown, cool. Anger Issues, buff, good. At what cost? Nerf, good. Calculated Enhancement, buffs for the last 2 rows is cool. Black Rose Crown, re-enabled, giving a Shojin, but not 2-1 is good. Enforcer Crown, giving a Maddie instead, good. And Exalted Adventure, not giving giving rerolls, but now it gives a lesser champ duplicator on select and start of every stage. I love this change because you're getting a lot of duplicators to play with. It seems like a buff overall, right? Because you only got 6 rerolls before, I think, which certainly like early game, I guess, that allows you to accelerate, but 2 duplicators by stage 3 is going to outpace the rerolls oftentimes, and then once you get the extra ones, huge. Gross to Friends Pass, just absolutely destroyed, is really, really good. If you guys ever played against this augment and somebody just stacked up HP the entire time and then just loaded into late game with an extra 1000 HP on their front line on like a 6 Sentinel Heimer board, it was disgusting. So yeah, big prismatic pipeline nerf as well. You don't get extra old gold orb loot, and you don't get extra prismatic orb loot. It goes down by 30%. I think that's great. I mean, we've talked about this before, but this is probably one of the most broken augments of the game. Fully over quantity, big buff. I'm excited to play this because this felt a bit underwhelming, the one that turns your units with only 1 item into radiant items. Giving an extra 12% HP means you can really easily like win streak early with this. I'm very, very excited about this. Big buff to trade unlock geniuses. This is, I think, like the worst like team up augment in the game, just based on vibes, which makes sense. Buff to Heimer gives you a JG as well, is nice. Void Swarm, that's just hyper roll, okay. And then Trifecta, a little bit of a nerf. It's actually a huge nerf to Trifecta. Wow, I didn't think this augment was outperforming that much, but maybe I've just been not taking it enough. And I can't. I simply cannot go over all of these anomaly changes because we're already, talk a bit. Reasonable. Bully nerf. In my opinion, Bully didn't feel that broken, but maybe in their data, Bully was broken. But I feel like that's probably like Camille outperforming. So I'm a little bit surprised by this. Center of the Universe I haven't played around at all. This is the one that they reverted, which a lot of people are complaining about. This is a huge buff, right? An extra 1% per 10 HP loss. So I think this is a good nerf. Cosmic Rhythm they disabled because they just didn't, Cosmic Rhythm Viktor seemed disgustingly broken, which makes sense. So They said it's probably going to come back next patch. Dramatic Entrance, a little bit of a buff slash nerf, I think is solid. This Fireball, oh wow, Fireball nerf. I did not know Fireball was like outperforming. In my opinion, it felt a little bit weak, but I didn't take it that often. Hard Mind, Heavy Hitter, Bonus Armor Noir. I mean, yeah. I mean, how many do they have one? Because like a few of the ones that give like especially the one that gives extra AD percent is just, I feel like you're never supposed to take it, but we'll see. Laser Eyes, good buff. I like it. Legacy of Shrima, sure. Mage Armor, another. Okay, I like this as well. Magic Training, is that good? Okay, interesting. 1000 cuts, good good nerf. I think that's reasonable. Nothing wasted, big nerf, but I think this is absolutely necessary in a lot of these Rebel comps. Built really, really insane. Power Absorption. Power Absorption AD is no longer multiplied by other sources of percent AD. Oh, okay. Scuttle Familiar. Okay. Oh, that's good. This is a little like bug fix as well. Yeah, I mean, most of these don't seem crazy to me. I was wondering if they were going to change stuff like, oh, wow, that is a crazy change. It was a 3-turn delay before the unit becomes 4-star. Doesn't this one just suck now? I mean, it's obviously a big upgrade, but 3-turn delay, that's an insane amount of time late game. I feel like you probably just don't ever want to take this one now, but I guess we'll see in what the future looks like. They didn't change Oh no, this is the nerf. I was about to say they buffed Slow Cooker. I feel like so many people rated this augment so highly when you have like a really high HP carry. But yeah, they did nerf this. It's just green instead. Your energy stat share. No change to well, whatever it's called. Call the weak or something like that, where you the Urgot one. But they did make the change. I guess oh yeah, I didn't even talk about that, but that's like the first thing here, right? Oh, I think maybe I don't know where he says it, but they're also changing anomalies. Yeah, I don't think it's in anywhere in here, but they are making the change this patch where anomaly, you can see duplicates now. I think the person who screenshotted these just missed that first slide. But yeah, you can now see duplicates of anomalies. I personally hate the change because there's never a situation where you're rolling for anomaly, you skip one, and then you want to see that one again. It's just like kind of a way to make it so you can't force anomalies as well, but I think there are much more elegant ways of doing it. People have suggested like your first 10 rerolls cost 1 gold, and then your next 10 cost like 2 gold, and then your next 10 costs 3 gold. I think that's a lot better, honestly. It makes for more interesting decisions, in my opinion. The hitting repeats one just seems really, really annoying to me. So I don't love it, but we'll see. I'm kind of a fan of being able to force anomalies because it allows for really cool comps to exist, but you know. All right, let me know what you guys think of all of these changes. Overall, a lot of good stuff, a few things that I'm curious about, but I've heard a lot of people really, really glaze this patch and say that it'll be a very good patch. So I'm really, really hyped to watch Macau, see how the meta shapes up, and just, you know, see what everything looks like. So yeah, I don't want this video to be any longer. All right, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.